I found that I'm retaining more muscle tissue now and at a lower body fat than what I was doing before. Maybe I might go up to 500 or 600 grams of protein. I'll get meat sweats. So that is a very obvious thing. That's when I know my body's just wasting it effectively. If he said to me, okay, Jonathan, hit the hammer now and get back in shape, 2 weeks time, I'll be a skeleton like that, because there's not a template way to do carnivore diet, I don't think, but there's animal foods and just eat them. The ones that make you feel good, eat them. The ones that don't. I think it's that simple. But then obviously you get the other side of it where the men are involved in getting the women on drugs and things. And there's a lot of weird stuff going on in that industry, which probably wouldn't surprise you at all, but it's not pleasant at all.
So I've got Jonathan Griffiths with us again. He is correct me if I'm wrong, but a carnivore bodybuilder, right? Based in the UK.
That's right, yeah. I've been doing the carnivore diet now for 4.5 years.
4.5 years. You haven't perished from scurvy or anything else, it looks like. So you're still alive, so that's good.
Sorry, it's a bit quiet still. Yeah,
still a bit quiet.
Sir.
Okay. Let me ask you, a lot of people will say that, some people say that you cannot build muscle without carbohydrate. I've heard people say that. Other people say it's suboptimal. Obviously, as a bodybuilder, that is one of the forms. My focus is not bodybuilding. I do things I do in the gym for other reasons, and I don't have a desire to bodybuild. But in your specific case, and I know there's other people that are doing carnivore bodybuilding, I've talked to them before. What have you found with regard to the ability to put on muscle? Do you have to do anything that's not intuitively obvious to a lot of people, to just eating up? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my general thoughts of that, muscle tissue, what we require in muscle tissue is glycogen, which we can get through the transmutation of protein and fat into glucose through gluconeogenesis. The protein we need to build the skeletal muscle structures, and the fat we need for the layers around their cells and that sort of thing. So for me, it tells me, okay, we need 2 of those things at least, because one of them we don't have to deliberately get for our diet. Now, the next point for me would be that there are a lot of athletes out there that are doing this, not just myself. So Dr. ShawnBaker most recently set a world record in, I believe, over 55 category for the indoor.
To be accurate, it's an American record. I'll get that world record in probably a week or so.
Yeah.
I'm just building my, but I've looked at that, so the challenge I missed with it. I'm very confident with the world record here in probably the next week, I think. So, but anyway, press on.
Yeah. So the other points are that I would not notice any difference between now and back then in terms of my training performance. I'd actually say I train better because I'm less inflamed, I'm less bloated when I go to the gym. I'm not stuck at the bottom of a squatting style sort of movement and struggling to breathe because I've eaten just 2 kilos of chicken, broccoli and rice for the last 2 hours or so. So that's been a massive benefit to me. The other thing is I've been tracking my weights, reps, food intake for the best part of a decade now. So I know what does and doesn't make a difference. I've got lots of data to look back on, and there's so much interesting stuff which will really surprise a lot of people. But yeah, so looking at the data that I did have, I found that I'm retaining more muscle tissue now and at a lower body fat than what I was doing before. And although I was heavier back then, so I've been as heavy as 125 kilos, I'm now walking around about 96 kilos, a lot less body fat, but all my muscles have that more dense appearance, less inflamed, like more deeper separated cuts. And it's like true muscle now. It's not just inflammatory muscle. You gain a bit of weight that comes off as soon as you eat 0 carbs for 3 days.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is telling, is if you drop the carbohydrate, you see a reduction in swelling, maybe some inflammation. You're not going to lose a bunch of muscle in 3 days. And so what we're solving is obviously one base to me and that kind of stuff. And what about, because one of the, I guess, I would say one way to measure if it's actually more muscle is correlation strength. It's not a direct correlation, it's a pretty easy with that correlation. So have you found that you've retained strength during this process?
Sorry, what's the last part of the sentence? Have you found
that you've been able to retain or gain strength while doing this?
Yeah, I'd say I'm stronger now than I was back then, at least in the movements I can do. So within the last 4.5 years, I've had lots of different things. I started the diet. About 2.5 years into the diet, I had a spine fusion. So It changes the argument a little bit when I'm not squatty anymore, for example. But I will say my leg driving, things like leg extension, things which are isolated where I can measure it, are much, much stronger. The lactic acid buildup seems a lot less as well, which is interesting. It's probably an element of the carnosine buffering the lactic acid. But the main thing I found is like strength endurance is much more. In terms of peak strength, I'd say it's been about the same, unless being heavier from being inflamed from carbs gives you added weight, which may transfer to some sort of lifting benefit.
Yeah, fat powerlifting, right? Big belly, bigger full belly, squat more, bench more, when you deadlift things. And I would say from a muscular endurance standpoint, I'd do well with that as well. I'm not as interested in saying reps in the morning as get more. So I'd be well with the work points right there. Training. Here's another question that a lot of people are interested in. It's applicable outside of bodybuilding is, what about strategies for losing weight and getting leaner on a carnivore diet? What do you, some people say, versus Robert Sykes, higher fat, still reasonable protein. Some people say, hey, I think that's better, higher protein, lower fat. What's been your success based on?
Yeah, sure. It's a brilliant argument because I can see the mechanisms on both sides. I would say I'm more of a protein-centric kind of person, but it's not that I'm saying eat all of the protein and eat zero fat. It's just, if I was going to pick one that had to be higher, I'd say it'd be protein. If I was to try and say what has more value in a diet, protein after all means proteos, in Greek etiology, which means the first. So it tells me it's pretty important. The Greek people got quite a lot of things right, in my opinion. Anyway, getting back to the point, so about in terms of the approach, higher fat or higher protein. Now, the argument is typically that having a higher fat intake will allow you to retain more strength because you've got more readily accessible fat to oxidize, basically. For protein to be turned into usable ATP downstream, it's a lot more difficult and a lot more of a challenging process. It's not a traditional energy substrate. But the problem with having too much fat is that people then start to try and creep down the protein. The idea is you're in lower glucose flux, more ketones, that sort of thing. But people are using ketones as a measure of how much fat they're burning. But it isn't right representative at all. The way you should be working how much fat you're burning is from measuring things that aren't artifacts of something else which is happening just by circumstance in the body. So what I mean by that is you're looking at yourself in the mirror and taking a photo between day 1 and day 7. You're saying, okay, I ran this diet for a week, this training session, whatever. What happened between those two photos? Do you look leaner? Are your muscles stronger? You can tell these things by looking. Then you've got measuring your waist using digital body fat calipers, which are cheap and affordable. I mean, I can do 9 sites in my body, and I'm not the most agile, mobile of people. So yeah, I'd look at those sort of things to measure what's working, what isn't. But what you'll find is you also need to look at your training performance. So if you're in a phase of training where you're trying to cut down to get into contest bodybuilding, rip shape, then ideally you want to retain all the muscle mass in your body. How would you do that? Ideally, you retain your training performance level. So that means, okay, so how am I going to retain my training performance level? So I've got the most amount of muscle in my body with coupled the least amount of fat. So basically, it's about getting the macros right. So enough protein to recover and keep lean muscle tissue on your body, but also enough fat to support hormone synthesis, give yourself different vitamins, minerals, all these sort of things that usually come in that sort of animal food form. Then from there, you've got exactly what you need. And what I found mostly is unless someone drastically changes their training overall load, or volume, frequency, rep sets, everything combined in a given time span, they'll have to increase their protein. But if they don't do that, the protein, largely speaking, does not change because your lean body mass, your lean fat-free mass, the absence of fat in your body being muscle and skeletal tissue is still there, sort of thing. So you're not going to drastically change the protein, but the fat is something which scales up and down drastically. So now my last bodybuilding competition on June the 2nd this year, I basically kept my diet the same, but what I did was I just made sure the protein was as high as possible. I didn't lower that unless I had to. Carbs was 30 to 40 grams from dairy, milk, eggs, that sort of thing. Then the fats were down to 120, but I just nailed it straight to 120 from about 350 because I wanted quick results and fast. But I used mainly step counting as my leverage to oxidize more fat and get leaner. But the diet didn't change because the diet didn't need to change. I gave my body what it needs. I just had to find a way of titrating down the body fat without damaging my body any further. So that's my broad take on the protein fat ratio sort of idea.
Okay, so 30-ish, 30, 40 grams of protein or so carbohydrates you can find from various sources. With eggs have a half a gram each or something like that. 120 grams of fat. And then how much protein? Because you're 100, almost 100 kilos.
350.
350. So decent amount, yeah. So 3 grams, 3.5 pounds per kilo or something. Does that, and feel, how do you feel about that? How do you feel? Some people say they feel more sluggish or they don't feel as mentally clear, high protein, all of that. Did that have an impact on you?
That's a good question. Yeah. What I will say is I based that sort of dietary amount based on what I did in the off season. So it wasn't, oh, I'm starting a diet, my protein's gone up from 200 to 350. It's built up over years and years to about 350. So that's where I landed basically. And that's to appetite, honestly. Even when I was eating 350 plus fat in terms of grams in the off season sort of period, I was still eating 350 grams of protein. So that tells me, okay, my body does actually need that because going beyond the realms of 350, 400, 500 grams of fat is a lot unless you're a big guy. I probably don't have the organ capacity and enzymatic sufficiency to actually do that. But it's been scaled up and scaled down quite gradually for most part of my diet career. I'm very heavily invested into making sure I do the right thing at the right time, not doing too much in terms of diet changes. The minimal effective change to get the best benefit. I've done probably something of the magnitude of maybe 30 protein sparing modified fasts in my adult life, basically. So that's effectively what I'm doing, although not absolute zero fat. It's just the fat that comes to the meat for the most part. But yeah, it's a tough ask for a lot of people. I wouldn't recommend it. Digestion can be a problem, but I find that's only if the fat really is too low. But my protein intake, I can go pretty much high as well with that without too much ill effect. On the odd day where I might have not a cheat meal, but just more food because I feel like it, maybe I might go up to 500 or 600 grams of protein, I'll get meat sweats. So that is a very obvious thing. That's when I know my body's just wasting it effectively.
That's an interesting concept, the meat sweat. I was in Nashville a couple weeks ago. I roped into doing this time of year that I'm eating fat fish. I wasn't really I wasn't not really wanting to do it, but I kind of just came to it because I got out of a risk at some expectation there, and I ended up. I won the contest and weighed about 6 pounds of ribeye at the moment. And I remember I didn't eat for the next day. Like that pretty much I've been full of that. And you saw my body temperature would go up. And then it's something, man. Yeah, I mean, protein is very thermically and it's thermically produced and a lot of heat that comes off and metabolizing protein. I think it's some of that meat sweat thing that some people talk about. That's hemolysis. So when you're getting 350 grams of protein and 120 grams of fat and that small amount of carbohydrate, what does that diet look like? Because you track everything. What would that day look like? Who was?
Yes, good question. So for a lot of people on the Carnival Way of Eating, they eat maybe 3 or 4 foods. I prefer a lot of variety. It's easier to get down more food if you have more options to choose from. I'd say like right now, for example, I've put my protein up to 450 just as an experiment. Done it before quite a few times, and I'm quite curious to see what happens with my body and my body fat levels at the end of this month's sort of time span. Now, what would I say my meals like? So basically, I'm having probably 3 eggs per day in the morning, a tin of sardines, sometimes 2, usually half a pack. So that's about a quarter of a pound of salmon. I'll have sometimes Greek yogurt with a scoop of whey protein in it. And then I'll have obviously things like ground beef. I do a lot of sirloin steaks at the moment. So a bit like picanhas, if anyone's wondering. Then beef mince and sometimes do chicken breast, things like that. But I tend to not prefer chicken breast, and that's more at the end of a diet phase when you're really struggling to get things down, and maybe you want chicken breast with a bit of butter on it rather than just meat all the time. Just a bit of change.
Yeah, so relatively lean sources of protein, which should make sense. So leaner cuts of red meats, some fish and chicken, lean dairy. Is it Greek yogurt? Is it a lower fat yogurt, or is it the full fat? Or what do you do with that?
I tend to get the full fat one in the off season and the 0 fat in the cutting sort of phase.
Okay. Yeah, that's it's into a sense. And how are you with satiety? Some people say that diet, some people in general say like a bodybuilding diet in general is very low relative. I think other bodybuilders are not consuming the carnivore diet, maybe more carbohydrate based diet will figure that in the middle or and I don't get often hearing just thinking about food costs. But is that does that seem to be an issue for you? Are you okay with the diet when you
Sorry, what's the last part of your sentence? Are you okay with the diet?
Yeah, how do you feel when you're getting into those lean? Are you like obsessed with hunger when you get close to
Oh, I
that
see,
sort
yeah.
of heat contest shape?
Yeah, so I find I don't get excessively hungry, but I do get more food focus. I think it's more energy requirement rather than actual I'm thinking about food. It's just more my body realizes, okay, not much is going in at the moment. We can't keep doing this. So I do get hungry in that sense, but it's not a fixation. Like, for example, today my meals all got pushed back 2 hours from what they usually would be. But I don't deliberately time meals. So I know for me, based on my experience, what I've done when my appetite leads me, it's been about 4 meals per day for the most part of the last year or so. I think when we spoke before that, I think it's 5 meals a day. I'm not eating that much anymore. I can't train as much. Yeah, 4 meals per day. And thinking about, what was it again? Sorry, my brain went dead.
Just how much hunger you're experiencing given
Yeah.
regular run.
Yeah, so I tend to be able to have my first meal at maybe 8 o'clock. Then, okay, maybe I want my next meal at 12. So I like time my day around having that. Maybe I'll book in a client beforehand or something. But then I might be doing some work on the screen for 3-4 hours. And as long as I eat that amount of food that I'm meant to eat in the day, but just put it in a confined window of that back end of that day, I'm fine. But if I then start to force it and deliberately go over, so if I'm meant to have, say, 2 kilos of meat in a day and I have 1.5 kilos, but the next day I try to catch up, it won't work. I'm better just keep my diet quite steady so I don't have massive fluctuations. The appetite thing is perfectly fine. It's just in the morning at the moment, I do wake up quite hungry, but I'm trying to retain I can't turn the camera, but I'm trying to retain quite a good lean body. Just got the British finals in about 10 weeks, so.
Yeah, I was going to ask you where you were in your competition, but you're 10 weeks out from the contest. What do you have left to do as far as, I'm sure you have to lose more body fat, so you have to get down to 5% or something like that. Something.
Yes, I'm in good shape at the moment. I can get into contest shape to match my last conditioning in about 3 weeks' time. It doesn't take me long. What I will say is that we're going to work closely, myself, my coach and I, we're going to work closely to make sure that I cruise into the show with just a minimal sort of hindrance to my way of life. Because if I'm just cramming all at the end in 3 weeks, you don't feel as good, and it can really put some toxicity in your body. So I think spreading it out is a better approach, just as long as I don't stay too lean for too long. When I competed last time, which may be the last before this year's show, is about 3 years before, and I was in contest shape near enough for about 18 months because of lockdowns and things that were going on, which is a nightmare. So I was just walking around shredded, bored out of my mind, which was not fun. And I wouldn't recommend anyone do it either. So definitely don't try that one. Give it a good gap in terms of time between shows as well, if you can.
Yeah, I've heard it. The number of other bodybuilders later. Yeah, you've been blessed with the disaster a long time. What about when you say I'm sure you're fairly acutely aware of what level of body fat you are, whether you measure it to CarnivoreDiet or whatever it's your first way to do that. What is something you can comfortably walk around at? I mean, can you walk around at 10% body fat and still feel pretty normal, or where do you feel comfortable at?
Yes, using body fat calipers, I walk around about 10%. I realistically don't think I'm on 10%. It's more like I'm probably about 15 to 20%. I've got like faint abs, separation. I tend to hold all my fat in my face. So if he said to me, okay, Jonathan, hit the hammer now and get back in shape, 2 weeks' time I'll be a skeleton like that. But my face is the last place to lose body fat, which is odd. Yeah, it's a bizarre thing to do, this bodybuilding. I definitely don't recommend it to a lot of people unless you're a bit nuts.
Yeah, I can see that. I've got no desire to be a myself person. I like to get in there, so trying hard to push myself on. What about as far as I see a lot of people saying that in order to maintain that muscle mass, you still got to train and maybe have, I don't know, given the fact that you've got some fusion and you've got some limitations on how far you can train, how do you maintain your intensity while you're going through it with holding in the caloric deficit?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I tried to emulate my training in the off season, but in the contest phase. So, the sort of saying, as you train, so you shall perform. Now, if the way I'm training is resulting in that much lean muscle mass now, then I'm going to have to be damn certain the way that I'm training should match that when I'm in ideal contest shape. It just makes logical sense. The training is the same. The only thing that might change is the training volume. So if I do 10 sets per workout at the highest point phase of my training, maybe I'll drop down to 8. So rather than doing 2 sets for 2 exercises, I'll just do 1 for each. And that'll be completely fine. I won't suffer any deleterious effects for it. My body will probably thank me, and my joints will probably thank me. I'll be less inflamed for it as well. But outside of that, I do change my training frequency. So I might do perhaps 4 sessions usually. Maybe 1 week I do a check-in with my coach. Oh, I look inflamed, I'm sore, I'm tired, my body's slowed down too much. There'll be like a dietary intervention, which would be like a fat refeed, which is effectively 50 to 70 grams more fat in my instance. Or we'll just skip an extra day of training. So maybe that next week we'll do 3 sessions rather than 4. So there's plenty of levers to pull. But my training methodology now is, for the most part, it's slow, concentric, slow, eccentric, and static holds, things like that. And it's been really effective. And I'd say I've actually probably gained muscle since doing that. I'm not a novice in terms of bodybuilding anymore. I'm probably advanced to elite at this point. I've been training for about 15 years. I'd say I'd stalled largely for the past 3. But yeah, for the past maybe year or so, I've been using some of this sort of training method to really keep my muscles under tension. And yeah, I just use less weight. But I find better exercise for certain things. I use an alternation every now and then if I know something's giving me niggling pain. I train with the most control you've ever seen. It looked like I'm going in slow motion all the time, but it's been effective and I quite enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, so the time under tension, some those balls and you will mount. Speaking of, and this is one thing I see a lot of myths with bodybuilders, powerlifters, or athletes in general, too, as they get older, they'll complain about my shoulders hurt, back hurts, knees, my hips hurt, and they've got years of maybe intense training under their belt. And I think the diet impacts that in many ways. I just, myself, in my own personal experience, in my 40s, I had more pain. Now in my late 50s, I have less pain, more recovery, more soreness. I think the diet has quite a bit to do with that when I consider, and allows me to train at a higher goal intensity than looks. Now, given that you have 15 years of bodybuilding experience, 4 now at Carnivore, do you know a difference? You see a difference in either recovery or in overall amount of soreness given a certain amount of training?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'd say the soreness is certainly less. We know that a diet high in seed oils, those polyunsaturated fats, these things which cause excess inflammation, they ultimately, although they are in a sense anabolic because they throw your body in a state of inflammation where, okay, let's repair, let's build up, in effect, too much of that inflammation is not helpful. So you end up getting more soreness, but it doesn't always translate to more gains. People say, we've got a good burn in that workout. Well, yeah, it's getting a burner workout, it just means you've used it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's been given the necessary adaptive response to stimulate itself to grow. Yeah, I'd say the other things are, I'd say most notably actually is the time between sets. The fact I'm able to, I don't train for fitness. I'm a bodybuilder. That's what I focus on. I'm not too concerned about my speed on a bike or anything. I try to give it maybe 3 minutes between sets at most, usually 2 minutes. And between those sets, it's like the last minute or so where I'd usually be sort of huffing and puffing. So my heart rate, my resting heart rate for sure, my breathing definitely goes down a lot quicker. There's something to be said for that, and I don't use an inhaler anymore. And I was diagnosed with asthma when I was younger, so I used to have to use an inhaler quite frequently, I'd say. That's not an issue now. I don't have congested lungs and digestive system that just doesn't let you breathe at night. But yeah, it's been effective for sure in terms of like exercise performance.
Yeah, I guess one thing I think we've talked about this in the past and the history of at least autism would you manage? Actually, we're having a very nice conversation here, and it's the diet has impacted that as well, right?
That's right, for sure. Yeah, I'd say although I still live in the same way I used to, it's now a case of I'm able to mask better. So when I'm having a conversation like this 2 or 3 times a week with different podcasters, YouTubers, influencers, it becomes a lot easier because it's second nature. What sort of things they're going to ask you keeps my day quite routined, quite structured as well. I've enjoyed that aspect of it. I'd say the brain fog is a lot less as well. And knowing that I had that initial benefit in the first 6 months has definitely been quite helpful to me because I think, okay, what other benefits can I get and how long can I sustain them for? And sometimes for me, it's a bit of a challenge to think, okay, if I feel this good now, how much better do I feel with a bit more of this or that? Or if I cut out eggs for a week, just these bizarre little things, just see what happens. A lot of my experiments get jumbled up and they don't really mean much because anecdotes, isn't it? But I'd say you have to be very sort of inquisitive, science experiment with all this sort of stuff because there's not a template way to do carnivore diet, I don't think. But there's animal foods and just eat them. The ones that make you feel good, eat them. The ones that don't, I think it's that simple.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, unfortunately, well, because what drives your decision making is how does it taste and what I say on cost and things. So notice how it makes them feel in a way outside maybe some acute issues with, when you talk about mental performance, aches and pains, sleeplessness, depression, mood alterations, it impacts all of that. And don't really think because to know that I can sort that out. What about, let's say, so you said you had a bodybuilding contest earlier this year, last year. How do you come back from that? Well, obviously, there's the concept of reverse dieting. How does that work? The concept of following. How do you begin a gradual transition back up to the off seasons?
Yeah, so because I knew I had the British finals about 18 months after, I thought, okay, I'm not going to be able to get out of shape and get back into shape. It's too much stress in the body. You've got to do the zigzaggy sort of stuff with your diet and training and the sort of like energy expenditure you may have. But what I did actually end up doing was just increase my protein a bit, increased fat a bit. So that was it. But I didn't do what I'd usually do. So usually my focus is getting my body weight back up to what it was beforehand, safely as possible, without altering my blood pressure, fasting blood glucose, things like that. And just get there as quickly as possible. Okay, in the optimal phase of training or body weight, body composition, where I can actually gain some muscle because I'm eating enough food and I'm not like in a dieting state. Health permitting, I like people to reverse diet as quickly but as safely as possible. The next one would be probably saying that for me, it's just been a case of altering my food grammage, basically, either upwards or downwards, based on how I feel, but also maintaining a good level of leanness. So I take my progress photos each week on a Friday. I'm thinking, okay, I've lost a bit here, but I've gained a bit here this week, I've lost a bit here. So it's just that tip to trying to feel good, maintaining good leanness for what's currently 10 weeks out of my next show. Then ensuring that my training performance doesn't suffer and I feel healthy. My body's not in any kind of surplus or deficit in terms of food.
When you did your last contest, how lean did you end up getting? That's not like when you step on stage or a few days before.
Yeah, on the show day, I did take my body fat calipers with me just for the hell of it, so I was curious. The leanest I got was 3.89% on digital body fat calipers. And it could have been less if I measured in probably thinner parts of me, but I tend to just do the same body part. I feel the same area of the skin. I don't know for certain, but I was around 91 kilos on stage at 6'1", roughly. So yeah, I was very light, but it looked like I appeared light. Like everyone on the stage was heavier than me. But my contest shape was, my leanness was excellent, basically. It was very good. So when you drop that last few kilos, then a bit more, that's when you start to really pop eyes out.
Okay. And when you did the last contest, is that what qualified you for the finals or something like that? Or was it qualifying from this way?
That's right, yeah.
Let me ask you, so obviously you got your own condition to worry about, training yourself, not thinking about other folks, maybe the bodybuilding, is that what you're doing? And you also help the people with that type of stuff.
I help people with all sorts of things. Binge eating disorder, bodybuilding. Some people just want general training advice. Quite a few health folk, but I find that a lot of them are quite young. They're more people that are perhaps a bit younger than me even. I'm not that young, I'm 29. But people that are younger than me, and they've got themselves into this problem because of bodybuilding, because of their diet. They want to chat to someone who's about their age, who's been through the same sort of thing. So I speak to a lot of people, as you can imagine, with autism, issues of spine disease, hip problems. Yeah, quite a mix, really. But I do enjoy speaking to everyone about everything because you provide someone with a plan of action, you give them the intervention, and you always land them in a better place than what they were before, which is really nice.
When you say problem bodybuilding, what kind of issue they're cropping up with the bodybuilders that you're related to?
Yeah, I found oftentimes it's been people using drugs when they perhaps shouldn't, not doing their research first. People shouldn't be asking people on the internet what drugs they should take. I don't think it's favourable for anyone. It's the right routes, and there's people out there who produce content you can actually pay for, which will teach you how to do it. And they'll be from a doctor's perspective, not just someone like me, for example, that doesn't know much at all about this sort of thing. So yeah, that's been my take on it. But I do find oftentimes they have eating disorders of some kind. Usually it's like an aversion to food. They don't want to eat food. They do tend to be quite purist kind of people, so they want the strictest of lion diets with the purest of salts and the best water. And I find a lot of times they can become a bit neurotic, and it's a paralysis, over-analysis, that sort of thing. So that's been my take for young people like bodybuilding.
Okay, so obviously with no one is surprised bodybuilding has drug usage in there. It's pretty common, pretty typical. What has been your experience with this type of thing? Was something you experimented with, or not interested in, or was it a good few?
Yes, I've used them on and off in the past. Depends which phase of training I'm in. It depends what I want to do as well. Sometimes you just don't want to worry about jabbing yourself. It's not a fun, nice thing to do. Initially, when you start using them, you think it's exciting because you think, oh, every time you do it, you get more muscle. But there's always a bottleneck somewhere, and it's usually recovery. So you have to take time off from these sort of things. I'm not an advocate for a lot of the protocols that people are doing right now out there, but I'm no world expert either. I just speak to people that I know that I trust, and I get information from people that have done their due diligence, their research, and haven't put people in hospital. So that's my suggestion to people out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some potential for some great consequences from it. I remember when I was in medical school, I was training in the gym. I'm really this is all like I'm using insulin. That's all. That's quite a potential for disaster. It's part of bodybuilding culture as well. What about men and women differences? I mean, there's some thought that we have to alter diet. I wish studies came out showing it came with a food phase, which our administration they have an increase caloric intake. Maybe even a farming for that is not the big chat. You're the claims say that with that to accept. Do you see any differences in men and women? And you talk about that differently from all of them?
I think the diet should be largely the same. I just think the ratio in terms of protein to fat might be slightly different. My argument would be that a man would have a high amount of protein per kilo of mass, and a woman would have more fat per kilo of mass. So it might be a ratio of something like 1-to-1 for men in terms of grams. So that'd be 150 maybe. Then for women, maybe, can't do the math now, I'm a bit tired, 100 protein to 120 fat in terms of grams. So that's my take on it. I think that a lot of the time women don't realize how much protein they need to eat. It's until they put them onto a plan or work out what they've had before. We do the food diaries, recording data. They're like, you're eating 60 grams of protein per day. I don't have anyone on less than 100 grams of protein per day. And I've never had anyone on less than 100 grams of fat per day either. And people have gotten into serious shape doing that. I think when people start to go too low, that's when they start to encounter hormonal issues. Chasing the ketones is not ideal. It doesn't seem to do much unless you've got epilepsy. So there's other markers out there for much better tests, I think, which will be better able to help people understand what's going on in the body at a given time. I think, like I said before, about the protein being a static kind of amount and the fat being the lever. I think sometimes women can just benefit from eating a bit more fat. I know that oftentimes that women are, you more like to hear a woman say something about like, dark chocolate and peanut butter and high fat snacks and keto things. Guys don't really talk about it that much. So it tells me there's something obviously in fat that women crave more, which makes them feel good. So for me, putting an extra tablespoon of butter in a lady's diet plan, it's probably just what she needs in a lot of cases.
I mean, women clearly are designing with more fat than men, but obvious for reasons of the capacity to carry the baby. Do you find that, well, again, with women, the big body, it seems a lot in the talk a lot. Women on fitness competition, figure, bodybuilding, there's just problems in that cohort. A lot of women mess themselves up. Particularly the ones who get burned red when ones to 10% body fat, which is a very young woman. Do you see that as well? Do you see a lot of women who hormonally damage themselves trying to do as lean as possible?
Yeah, I do, if I'm honest. And oftentimes it's women my generation or below. So I'm thinking like 18 to 29, 30-year-olds. They do suffer a lot with just this body complex, body dysmorphia thing. But at the same time, I think their goals aren't aligned with what they should really be, morally speaking, because they want the Instagram body. They want to go to the shows, but they want to take photos at the show. Then they want to go backstage, have the interview. Then they go into their car, bring out a big giant box of cookies. They're obsessed with binge eating and food like that. Yeah, it's nice to treat yourself, but they just go completely overboard. And it's all about this like parade, this like over the top, like show offy kind of, oh, this is what I'm doing, look at me kind of thing. Then you get bodybuilders on the other side of thing that don't like wearing vests. I hate wearing vests, but it's like really hot, less showy sort of people. And they go to the show, but it's all about how they feel about themselves. But then obviously you get the other side of it where the men are involved in getting the women on drugs and things. And there's a lot of weird stuff going on in that industry, which probably wouldn't surprise you at all, but it's not pleasant at all. Yeah, I'd say it does seem to be that just in general, they do idolize junk food and it's seen as this like holy grail at the end of it. But after my show, guys, I didn't even eat anything off plan for 2 to 3 weeks. I didn't care at all. I was like, I don't enjoy being in shape for a little bit. Obviously, your backside hurts a lot when you sit down and it hurts to walk because your feet feel like, well, dust. But yeah, it's just nice to be lean for a bit, then start to gain a little bit of weight. And right now I'm something like 4 kilos above stage weight, which is not a lot, which I can shift in like 3 weeks. So I'm feeling quite good as I am right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how you feel at 4 kilos off of stage weight. So you feel pretty good at this point.
Yeah, pretty good overall. It's just making sure I don't try to overdo anything, like do too many steps one day, because my spine and hips are not good. So I don't want to be overzealous and try to do too much all the time and wear my body down if I don't have to.
Yeah, what was it? The spinal fusion? Remind me what prompted that? Was there an injury or something? How did that evolve?
Yeah, so I was playing rugby in Italy in a school sports tour back in, I think it was about 13 years old. Basically, the Italians somehow misread our documents and insisted that we play it against adults, which is illegal. Much bigger than us. And I was quite athletic at that age. I looked quite strong, but I'm not an adult, guys, at that age. I wasn't strong in that sense. I didn't have the skill. Anyway, so I got crunched down by a guy when I didn't even have the ball in my hands at all. And it was a nasty tackle, really horrific. And long story short, I couldn't stand up straight for 2 weeks. I wasn't given any medication, wasn't given a scan. The GP that I spoke to just ran his finger along my spine. And he said, "Oh, no, you're fine." And that was it. I was ignored for probably 12, 13, 14 years, I don't know. Until maybe I was the age of 27 or 28, they finally gave me an x-ray. And it was very obvious damage that was there. Like, it's so obvious I could see it, and I'm not a radiographer by any means. And since then I've had spine fusion surgery in 2022, December time. And now I'm a year and a half past it, and it's not looking good. I get a lot of pain in my hips now. The back pain is a bit less, I'd say, than before surgery, granted, but the hip pain is significantly worse. Constantly having to almost lie down when I'm chatting to people or doing podcasts and things, which is annoying. I can't stand for very long. I can't walk very far. And I'm running out of options in terms of what I can do. So I'm just going to have to play it by ear and see what my next scan says, which would be part 4 of this ShawnBaker podcast talk.
That's great. And you've obviously been really successfully bodybuilding. with all it's quite a bit of tenacity and that persistence to be able to basically do all that stuff. What about as far as your skill? I know you've got like online, you have a bit of an online presence now, or you use social media, you've been much on social absolutely to some of it, obviously.
Yeah, so I've got a YouTube channel, which is Carnivore Muscle. Instagram is Carnivore Muscle. I've got a website, which is compositionconsultant.com. So I'm an online coach. I sell diet plans, training plans, all custom stuff, legit stuff, not rubbish, guys. Give out free ebooks as well, things like that, consults. All sorts of things people want to access to gain muscle and lose fat on a carnivore diet.
Okay. And you said you've met quite a few bodybuilders that you're doing carnivore now. Is that fair to say? What level are these guys at? Is it all the novice guys, or you said some advanced?
So there's two guys I know follow a carnivore keto diet. So we're talking, I don't know, a handful of lettuce or pickles each day. So near enough carnivore. One of them is a bodybuilding amateur. He's a top amateur, if that makes sense. You wouldn't have fought it. He's certainly someone that could be pro very easily. And then we've got another guy, I think he's in Australia. He's got a lot of health issues at the moment, so he's postponed competing, but he's competed before and he did quite well. So there's a few people out there, but not many. You struggle to come across them.
Yeah. I'm Robert Sykes, Keto Savage.
Oh, yeah, him.
He's been but this ketogenic diet, he has mostly carnivore. He has his keto which is his confidence. This that obviously uses product, I guess, to some. Do you get much negativity given your background, given the sort of the fact you're purporting to be carnivore bodybuilder, that stuff?
Yeah, I get a lot of negativity from people in the carnivore community. I don't like to see people that are muscular for some reason. I don't know what the audience is in that case. I get a lot of troll comments, which is a nightmare. Dealing with them each day is an absolute dread to deal with, but what can you do except block them? Yeah, outside of that, it's hard to really piece it together. Do you make the question a bit more like concise? Is that possible?
Yeah, I just wonder if, like I said, you said that you're getting quite a bit of trolling and that stuff. How often is that occurring? Is it more positive? And it seems like, to me, I don't see why people within the carnivore space would be upset with somebody succeeding as a bodybuilder. What are the criticisms that people in the carnivore space have about you being what you got?
I think they don't like it because I'm a young man that's built some muscle. I look older than what I am because of the health consequences of what happened before. The fact I'm autistic but don't present as a stereotypical autistic person really bothers and triggers people, I'm sure of that. So when you say it, it's no, he's not. I'm like, obviously I am. You can speak to anyone that knows me and speak to my practitioner that diagnosed me years ago. I was quite high on the scale, believe it or not. Yeah, I'd say that in terms of frequency, it's probably every hour or two. So I just turn off notifications on YouTube and try to ignore it.
So as far as, you got your next contest in 10 weeks, where's that going to be held at? Otherwise, in New London, or will they have a British?
I believe that's Telford, which is like near Wolverhampton. So Midlands kind of area.
Okay. And remember, I know I met you about 2 years ago at the PHC in Sheffield, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Where do you normally, where are you from?
I'm from Bournemouth, so pretty much as south central as you can get.
Okay. And how do you find carnivore in England right now? Is it becoming more popular? Same? Is it hard to get with there? Is it cost prohibitive? What are your thoughts on doing it? Okay.
I'd say it's probably more affordable than what I'd be doing if I was on a standard Western diet for sure. So for me, it's not a cost issue. We have reduced sections of the supermarket. Usually you can pick up something which expires the next day, which is half the price. It's very easy to access things. We've got great food quality over here compared to most countries. Price, quality, fine from my standpoint. But it is much, much harder to get a carnivore meal out and about. You do have to buy several meals to get enough meat in your plate to really feed you for more than an hour. So it's quite tough in that kind of state. But if you go to a Korean barbecue, I could go to Hot Pot, I could go to, I'm trying to think what it's called, Five Guys, McDonald's, Nando's, all those places but listed do basically just burger patties and cheese or just chicken, basically. So you can go to a few places, but then they're very much franchise sort of places. You wouldn't want to go there on a special occasion. So it's a shame we don't have anything more unique in that sense.
Yeah, and they've got a few steakhouses, I would imagine. But yeah, I remember I was in, I think it was Piccadilly Circus somewhere off the terminal in trains. I went and found out, if I would have Dallas tip, I think I tried to get burger buns for them. So it's like they were able to do it, but it was an unusual thing. I don't think I was thinking the first guy to live there or something. This is saying something usual about fellas there. All right, so so for the last, so you got 10 weeks to go. What do the next 10 weeks look like for you? When are you going to start pulling over to get into that, whatever, sickening condition?
Yeah, so we'll probably initially just increase my step count from, it's something like 3,000 on average, maybe to about 4,000 per day. We might do that for 2 weeks. I'm very responsive to dietary and training changes in terms of like body composition. Then we might do another 1,000 steps if we need to do more. And the diet will most probably remain the same. Although the fat may get a tiny bit lower, but only a touch. Then beyond that, okay, maybe say we're up to 6,000 steps. That's probably about as much as my body could handle for more than a few weeks. Then I'm going to probably say we could add in maybe 10 minutes of elliptical trainer, slow incline walk, something at the gym. And it's just literally just shuffling along basically on the elliptical trainer, cross trainers. Nothing quick, just moving. That'll be it. That'll be the job. Then reduce training volume around about a week out. Eat more food. That's essentially it.
Okay, so mostly just by encouragement, give me equal bets. And so how many calories would you be consuming towards the end?
I'm not sure. I'd probably say about 3,000, but I use macros. It'd be right now I'm doing 450 protein, 30 carbs, and 120 fat.
Okay, so 120 grams, 900, 1080 plus 400 plus another 16, 1,714. So it's 27 on 30 grams. Then for a while, I did 200. So just under 3,000. It's something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's not bad. That's really not bad for being vertically out. I know there's some folk that when they hand you 2,000, I believe. I'll tell you what, Jonathan, unfortunately, we're just coming up on my time. Once again, remind people where they can go, social media, websites to find out more fun. Hopefully, see you do well at this contest.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on again. So where you can find me, YouTube will be Carnivore Muscle. I've got something of 600 plus videos. Check out the playlists there. Loads of information. You won't find more muscle building, carnivore diet sort of videos anywhere else out there on the internet right now. Other places are Carnival Muscle on Instagram, and website is compositionconsultant.com.
All right. Wish you well. Let us know how it goes. And thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great day and keep fighting on, man. Appreciate it.